Judges chapter 15. We're going through Samson still, so chapter 15 is right bang in the middle of the whole account of his life. 20 verses today, 3 sections as usual. First one we're going to go for Samson and his wife, verses 1 through 8. So it says this, but it came to pass within a while later, in the time of wheat harvest, that Samson visited his wife with a kid, and he said, I will go into my wife into the chamber. But her father would not suffer him to go in. And the father said, I verily thought that thou hadst utterly hated her, therefore I gave her to thy companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray thee, instead of her. And Samson said concerning them, Now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure? And Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and took firebrands, and turned tail to tail, and put a firebrand in the midst of 2 tails. Then, when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go on the standing corn of the Philistines, burn up both the shocks and also the standing corn with the vineyards and olives. Then the Philistines said, Who have done this? And they answered, Samson, the son of the in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. And Samson said unto them, Ye have done this, yet will I be avenged of you, and after that I will seize. Verse 8, and he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock Etam. Okay, so we have Samson kind of retaliating or going back to what happened in the chapter before, when his wife was given to his friend. I don't know if you guys can remember that or not. She had buddied up the Philistines. They talked about the riddle, the lion, things like that. And then now Samson is finding out where his wife is. So first thing first, we're going to look at verse 1. It came to pass within a while in the time of the wheat harvest. The great thing that the Bible does is it tells you the time periods, right? It tells you when things go down. So we can look at this about the wheat harvest about the end of April, maybe the beginning of May, our time. Grain would be gathered into heaps, laid on the field or onto the threshing floor. It's the dry season, and wheat would be at the perfect time for harvesting. So the fact that we know this is when he came, it was right in time for the harvest of the wheat. It was the perfect time to do that. So we find Samson visiting his wife with a kid, not a child. Okay? You're shocked, Eli. Why are you shocked? No? No? What's up?
Mine says young goat.
There you go. That's more like it. Baby goat.
Oh, okay.
The same thing when we talked about last chapter, when he said Samson rent the lion apart, like ripping apart a young goat. I don't know why they use it as a description, but here he is again. He is bringing a gift. What a gift, a baby goat. Custom in the East for a visitor is to bring a present. This would even be maybe a token of reconciliation between himself and his wife. So Samson, though, was coming with a gift. He had a purpose. What was that purpose? In fact, it tells us, end of verse 1, I will go into my wife into the chamber. So basically he's coming to sleep with his wife. Going to get some time with my wife. That's what he's doing. But her father did not let him. Her father would not suffer him to go in, would not let him go in, right? Verse 2, we find out why. The father says, I really thought, hey man, I verily thought that thou hast utterly hated her. I really thought you hated her, man. I thought you hated her guts after she betrayed you and manipulated you and did all. I thought you hated her, so I just got rid of her. Right? I moved her on to a different guy. It didn't say that Samson hated his wife, right? The chapter before didn't say anything about him being angry or upset or hating his wife. But something here, the father-in-law seemed to think that Samson hated his wife. So, Judges 14:16, we can rewind a little bit. It says, Samson's wife wept before him, and thou dost but hate me, and lovest me not. Thou hast put forth a riddle unto the children of my people, and hast not told me. And he said unto her, Behold, I have not even told my father nor my mother, and shall I tell thee? What Samson's wife said to him there was, you must hate me. What this tells me is the reason why her father thinks that he hates her. It's because she's been saying, you must hate me. You must hate me, that's why. So maybe there's some talking behind the scenes, maybe there's a little bit of communication, so maybe lying being put in place here. There's this thought, obviously it's not written down, so it's just a thought of mine connecting the dots a little bit of backyard sleuthing. But there's an allegation that Samson hated his wife, so the father just thought, I'll let her go to somewhere else, someone else who would love her, someone else who doesn't hate her. But this proposal of marriage to the younger sister is an insult also. Can anyone think why this is a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing for Samson to be invited to marry the younger daughter? Anyone got any ideas? Go for it.
Is it a callback to the Jacob story where he got cheated out of marrying Rachel and got given Leah, the ugly one?
The ugly one? Yeah. It could be a callback. We can actually even just see that it was just unlawful. So it could be a callback, but even it's just part of the law. Leviticus 18:18 says, Neither shalt thou take a wife to her sister to vex her, to uncover her nakedness, beside the thither in her lifetime. So don't do it. Don't take your wife and then go marry her sister as well. Like, it was the law. God said not to do it. So it's almost like you're an Israelite, you're a Nazarite, you're one of these people. Can I tempt you with something else? I remember we talked about the temptations of Samson in the last chapter. Him going by wine, dead carcass, eating stuff from a dead carcass, doing certain things so many times over that he should just not have done. This is just another opportunity for him to be tempted to say yes. But Samson doesn't say yes. It's good that he didn't, right? But Samson responded. You know, the father's saying, hey, I thought you hated her, that's why I got rid of her. But I've got her more beautiful younger sister. Please take her instead. Be happy with her instead. Samson responds in 3. He said, Samson said concerning them, Now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. Think about this. Samson was angry with his wife's father here. The response here is like emotional. Emotion. But the real root of the problem was the bad choices Samson made in love. He allowed his heart to lead him to marry a Philistine woman. He had no business doing that. We already talked about that a lot last week, right? And again, we touched on last week, Proverbs 4:23, keep or guard or protect your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life. Failure to guard our heart can result in great trouble, right? We talked a lot about this last week. I'm not going to keep hammering it, but your heart will lead you astray, but you also need to protect it. And then he has this thing he says, at this time I will be blameless regarding the Philistines. God used Samson's ungodly anger for his purposes here, right? Psalm 76:10 says, Surely the wrath of man shall praise you. And this doesn't justify Samson's anger, but it shows the glory and power of God to use all things in his purpose. What we need to hear here is that it's not okay just to go around being an angry guy. You can be like, well, the Psalms tell me that it praises God if I'm angry, right? No. Really, the praise and glory is what God can do with all the things that we put out, right? The emotions that we put out. So, I want you to think about that. Don't use this as an excuse to just do whatever you want. Instead, think of it as a way of how we should be acting and how we should be living, instead of why God has to use our weakness for his gain in certain situations. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense or not. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Cool beans. Verses 4 and 5. Samson strikes out against the Philistines by burning their crops in the most epic of ways. Okay? So verse 4, we basically have, verse 3, we have this opportunity where Samson says, I'm going to go and do something now to the Philistines, and I'm going to be so blameless because of what you've done. And then he goes, and all types of bad news for foxes and jackals in the area, because he catches a ton of them, okay? It says, Samson went and caught 300 foxes, took 5 brands, turned them tail to tail, and put a 5 brand in the midst between 2 tails. So, Samson went and caught 300 foxes. Remember those cute little orange foxes with the white tail? No, not quite, okay? But we'll get to there in a second. Samson acted like a delinquent really here, of like, well, you can't blame me for what's going to happen next. But God used it for this purpose of fighting against the Philistines. He went and caught 300 foxes, put a torch between each of their tails. It's funny, it's a weird way to do things, right? But this word fox, okay, it translates to jackal instead. Anyone know what jackal is? No? It's kind of like this small dog thing. We're going to have a little look. Check out this picture here. It's a mixture really between a wolf and a fox. Okay? You see the long ears, see the kind of colouring similarities and things like that. Africa, those places all across over that way. Jackals are all over there, okay? And jackals are known to run in large packs. Some people would say there is no way that Samson would have been able to catch 300 little foxes or jackals like this. He couldn't have done it. But actually, jackals are known to run in large packs. Sometimes those packs are up to 200 jackals. So it's really not that big of an ask to do this. This would have taken a long time, of course. This would have taken a lot of tactics to do this. And I want to also mention, it doesn't tell you a timeline to when he got this done, okay? So when people say this is impossible, he couldn't have done this, it doesn't actually say how long it took. It doesn't actually say how he did it. It doesn't actually say the methods or anything like that. It just says he got it done. Samson was kind of determined like that, right? So then we get these torches, these firebrands, okay? Torches or matches basically that would burn real slowly, okay, long reach type situations, and they would retain the fire, and he tied them to their 2 tails in between, so it would set the tails on fire, so that it made the animals go crazy, and they'd run away from the fire, oh, it's still behind us, right? And they'd run through these cornfields and they'd set the whole thing on fire. But he put 2 jackals together, tail by tail, fastened tightly a fire match between them, and at night he lit them, sent them down the hills into the plains of Philistia, which was on the borders of Dan and Judah, which was where all their corn was. It was like the rich corn district, okay? And in verses 6 and 7, we see the Philistines retaliating by killing Samson's wife and family. So, this happens. Philistines ask this good question. Who has done this? Who did it? Verse 6. Who have done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite. So they're angry, they're frustrated, now they're wanting revenge. Revenge. We can read at the end of that, the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. This is pretty brutal, right? Samson's the one that's doing all this stuff. She's gone and is with a companion now. The father-in-law's in a different spot. They must have been like, okay, grab her, grab the father, put them together, burn them. What was the threat in the last chapter when they said, tell us the riddle, the answer to the riddle, or we're going to burn you and your father's house. Going to kill you all. And then they did it. They made true of their word, right? But God, in this opportunity here, used all of this to advance his plan for Israel and for redemption. Because of Samson's disobedience, it all happened at a personal cost, a great personal cost to Samson. And it's fair to think that if Samson was obedient, God could have potentially furthered his plan in a way that would have blessed him instead. But he had to go through this horrible thing instead because of his disobedience. So the wife and the father are burnt. In verse 7 we can read, Samson said unto them, ye have done this, yet will I be avenged of you, and after that I will cease. I'm going to take revenge on this. I will avenge you! Probably dropped to his knees and did one of those cinematic poses. No! You know? So we have this story here of retaliation. If you did this to me, I'm going to do this to you. Tat for tat, tit for tit, tat for tat, done. But retaliation is never a good ending story. It will keep going, and no one really wins in the end, right? But everyone walks away wounded. The true option as Christians is to turn around and say, it all belongs to God. I'm going to trust that it's going to happen the way that He wants it to. But that's really tough. Everyone had anyone do anything bad to you before? We all have, right? You wanted to get them back. Oh yeah, well you kicked me in the shin, I'm going to kick you in the shin twice. Ah! The actual correct response here would be to say, okay, you kicked me in the shin, I'm going to walk away and let God deal with that. But it's really tough sometimes, right? I think something to think about is Matthew 5:38-42. That idea of eye for an eye, we're not retaliating for that. And when Jesus said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, He said, but actually, how about you just turn the other cheek? You give them more, right? You love them more, you do more for them. And I use that as one of my final points today, so I'm not going to go too far into that right now, but just something to think about. Retaliation and revenge, it's not the best way. Verse 8, it says in here, he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and dwelt in the rock. Etam. So, he attacked them hip and thigh. This is an expression for cruel, unsparing slaughter, like over-the-top, aggressive slaughter. Basically, Samson was like a one-man army against the Philistines. So we can think about this like he went and he attacked them. He smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Basically, he just destroyed them. Okay? He is a one-person army against the whole of the Philistines here. And after he got done, he went and dwelt in the top of the rock, Etam. What that tells you is that he didn't go and hide out in some caves down by the sea or anything like that. He went to the top of the mountain, top of the rock. Okay? Samson had no more family. Could trust virtually no one anymore. He lived like a fugitive, alone in a cave. And instead of living in the low caves, Samson chose a cave at the top of a cliff, the Etam, the rock. He's hanging up there now, Which gets us to section 2. Ooh, get rid of this. Oh, I had a picture. Missed a picture. Sorry. There you go. So he would have tied the boxes through. This is a funny little picture done by a little kid, but I just thought it looked kind of funny. The trail, obviously, the more there's burns, more pain the animals would go, the faster they would run, and they'd end up dying. But he did this 150 times. So the corn was just devastated. Absolutely devastated. So, missed the opportunity for a picture. I'm sorry. Section 2, 9-17. It says this, I should tell you. Samson and the Philistines, sorry, that's what the title is for this one. Then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah and spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, why are ye come up against us? And they answered, to bind Samson are we come up, to do as him as he have done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the rock Etam, and said to Samson, knowest thou not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that thou hast done unto us? And he said unto them, as they did unto me, so have I done unto them. And they said unto him, we are come down to bind thee, that we may deliver thee into the hands of the Philistines. And Samson said unto them, swear unto me that you will not fall upon me yourselves. And they spake unto him, saying, no, but we will bind thee fast, and deliver thee into their hand. But surely we will not kill thee. And they bound him with 2 new cords, and brought him up from the rock. And when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. Verse 17, and it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and named that place Ramath Lehi. So, lots of things going on here. First things first, you have the Philistines coming to Lehi. Philistines went on an expedition. They found out who did the killing, they found out who did the destroying of the crops, they found out who wrecked their whole harvest, and they went to find and arrest Samson to get great revenge on what he had done to their people. So, let's rewind. Philistines, well, Samson did what a Nazarite shouldn't have done. Killed a lion, touched a dead body, had some honey, made a riddle, had a party, invited people. The people there were Philistines. He then made a barter with them. Hey, if you can work out this riddle, I'll give you a prize. If you can work it out, you give me a prize. You know, that, whatever way it works out there. He then decides to tell them the riddle. They go and ask the wife to manipulate him. So already there's like, okay, you're going to do this to me, I'm going to do this to you. You're going to do this to me, I'm going to do this to you. The Philistines get the wife to get the answer. Samson's upset. What does he do? He runs down 24 miles away, kills 30 Philistines, comes back. You manipulated my wife, I kill 30 of your men, right? Comes back. And then you see this kind of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, the whole way through between Samson on his own and the whole Philistines right there, okay? So here it is again. Now they come to arrest him. And verse 10, we can read that. Men of Judah said, why are you here? Why are you here? What are you going to do? And they say, we've come to arrest Samson, to do to him as he's done to us. That revenge, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth again, okay? And then we have the fact that soldiers from the tribe of Judah gave up Samson. This is a big deal. Gave up their own person, their own kinsman, you know, that type of person, to the Philistines. It just shows how much they were scared and under the oppression of the Philistines. They would rather please their oppressors, don't take it out on us, rather than support the guy who was trying to help them. That's a big deal. This is strangely common though, right? Think about when someone tries to stand up against bullies, people don't usually stand with them. It's usually 1 versus 2 or 1 versus, and you're the lonely person standing up against the bad stuff. That happens a lot. You don't see people running up and trying to help out all the time. Rare occasions you do, but people are happy to stand around and watch. Nowadays it's even to film, right? The one guy trying to stop the other guy from killing the other guy. You go, there's 20 of you here. With that many people, you can make a difference. People don't like to do that. Back then, people didn't do it either. Judah was happy to make sure that they were just out of blame. It's not our fault. It wasn't our idea, you know? And their response to the Philistines showing up in verse 11, and they found out the answer. They go up to the top of the rock of Etam, and they find Samson there. And they say, don't you know, Samson, don't you know that they rule over us? Don't you know they're in charge? That's not a way to convince someone to come down, right? That's not, don't you know those evil guys that have been horrible to us this whole time, have oppressed us, have made us feel terrible and live badly? They're in charge. We should really listen to them. Samson didn't want to hear that. But the men of Judah told Samson that they were planning on doing in verse 12, we're going to bind you up. We're not going to beat you up. We're going to tie you up and bring you down fast. Get this over and done with real quickly, okay? This can be real smooth. The idea here is maybe he could free his countrymen from the danger of the oppression of the Philistines. If we bring him to them, maybe they'll leave us alone. It's not a bad idea. It's kind of a bad idea, right? They're turning their back on their own person here. But Samson goes with it. Samson goes with it, right? It says, now they spake to him, saying, no, but we will bind thee fast and deliver thee into their hand, but surely we will not kill thee. We're just going to take you down. We're just going to take you down there, bring them to you, and we're not going to kill you. They're like getting all the blame off of them, right? We'll deliver you to their hands. What they do is nothing to do with us. It's kind of brutal. They put new cords and brought him from the rock. Brand new string, wrapped him up there, okay? The funny thing about this is we realized, I don't know if you can remember in chapter 14, and this is going to happen in a second, but a couple of times Samson got great strength go through his body. The Spirit of the Lord gave him strength to destroy the lion and to do other things, right? People must have known about Samson that he was a mighty man, that he was able to do certain things. But they just expect ropes to hold him? I don't know, it's kind of funny. They bound him with 2 new ropes brought him from the rock. It seems that Samson is submitted to this. Assuming it's true, it showed great faith on Samson's part. He was willing to put himself in a difficult position and to trust God to take care of it. Or you could look at the other side, maybe he just wanted to get close to the bad guys. I don't know. Verses 14 to 17, we can see what actually happens at the end throughout all of this and what God uses him for here. Samson uses the jawbone of a donkey to kill 1,000 Philistines. Okay, so we see again the Spirit of the Lord. When he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him. They were screaming, "There he is! Get him! Kill him!" Whatever they want to shout, right? And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him. The cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from his hands. They're a brand new rope that just ripped off. Okay, so verse 15. So the ropes have just fallen off. The ropes have just been ripped off of him there. And he found a new jawbone of an ass and put forth his hand, took it, and slew 1,000 men with it. Okay, jawbone of a donkey, right there. Picks this thing up and just starts killing people with it. That's pretty crazy. There's not a blade thing on there. There's nothing there that could, maybe he could get some good stabbage with those teeth. I don't know. I don't know. But he took a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand, took it, and then killed 1,000 men with it. He got the Spirit of the Lord in him, and he went. And Samson was unique among the judges because he was basically a one-man army. I've already mentioned this before against the Philistines. Other judges of Israel led armies against their enemies. Samson fought alone a lot of times. Okay, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps upon heaps of people, right? The inadequacy of the weapon shows the amazing, miraculous value that God has done in this instance. And then Samson makes a little bit of a song of it, really, in 16. With the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps. With the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. One more thing, verse 17, it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking, he threw the jawbone away out of his hand and called that place Ramath Lehi. So Ramath Lehi, this name basically means jawbone hill, or hill of the jawbone, which was an appropriate name for this amazing victory, right? And here it is. And he stabs it in like a flag or something. I don't know. Jawbone hill. So, final section for you. 18 to 20, section 3. God's provision for Samson. Okay? Says this, and he was sore athirst, and called on the Lord, and said, Thou hast given this great deliverance into the hand of thy servant, and now shall I die for thirst, and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised. But God clave a hollow place that was in the jaw, and there came water thereout, and when he had drunk, his spirit came again, and he revived. Wherefore he called the name thereof, En Hakore, which is in Lehi until this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. So you can just imagine this. Samson's rolled up, killed 1,000 Philistines, jawbone of the donkey, boom, 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 killed him. After all of that, he is exhausted, so thirsty that he thinks he's just going to die. Okay. So Samson needed to drink. He's thirsty. But being thirsty, what does that remind you of? You're alive, right? If you're thirsty, you're alive. You need a drink. You're thirsty, you have a dry throat. That means you can feel. That means you can understand and actually know that this is a weakness of being a human, right? That it's not just, he's not just this superhero, Samson the superhero that can come through and kill 1,000 Philistines. He is still human enough to turn around and be like, man, I'm thirsty. Right? He can go on an incredible Hulk rampage, destroy 1,000 people, but then be like, I could really do with a cup of iced tea, please. You know? Because he's still thirsty. So this thirst reminds him he's still human. That he's not this God. but he has weakness. And even after such a great victory, we need to remember our own personal mortality as well. What's up?
I can't remember in the rules of being a Nazarite and stuff, like, did it say anything about drinking from, like, the skeleton of, like, a dead thing?
That's pretty specific. Do not drink water from a dead thing. What does it say about dead things?
Don't eat from it.
But he grabbed a jawbone of a donkey. Right? He put his hands inside of a dead lion. He grabbed a jawbone of a donkey. He's drinking from a place from the skeleton, right? A hollow place of the skeleton. Is that how you read it?
Yeah.
It seems kind of weird, right? He's a Nazarite and he keeps doing something wrong. That's just why I say, like, Samson is I don't want to say he's bad, but he's not following the law that he's been given to follow. But that's what makes it very easy as us human beings to read this account of scripture and be like, I might not be super strong, but I make a lot of mistakes. Samson repeatedly makes a lot of mistakes. We can relate, you know? That's what makes this an easier account to kind of read through, because it's not like he did everything perfect. But again, he still screws up quite a lot. So, Wes, do you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, it's just, no, yeah.
He's just touching dead things.
Not the best Nazarite, yeah.
Yeah, not the best. So yeah, it's a funny thing. Even the weapon to kill the 1,000 Philistines, he's doing God's plan here of getting rid of the oppressors, but he's using a thing that he shouldn't even be touching. Something to think about. Yep.
Wait, who else were Nazarite?
Sorry?
Who else were Nazarite?
Who else were Nazarites in the Bible?
Yeah.
Can you think of anyone?
I remember you said like 2 other people were Nazarite.
Yeah?
Hannah's kid, I forgot his name.
Was it Samuel?
Yeah, Samuel, I think.
You got Samson,
Elijah.
Samson, Samuel, and John the Baptist.
I told you.
That was John Scott. I think Scott taught that in chapter 13, like the introduction of Samson. I think it was Samuel. But yeah, 3 other people to look at there as well. So, so Samson is so thirsty. So thirsty, okay? You gave me great deliverance, you gave me great victory. I won the war because of you, God. Look what he's doing now. He's looking to God and saying thank you. He's giving God the praise that he needs. Like Samson's life has gone from I'm going to disobey, I'm going to disobey, I'm going to disobey, I'm going to disobey, to him starting to realize, oh, you gave me all this. You're the reason. You're the deliverer. You're the one. Instead of me, he's looking at God now. There's been a shift. And this is a really cool thing to look at, okay? So you gave me a great deliverance into the hand of the servant, and now shall I die for first and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised. You gave me a great victory. Are you going to let me die here? In this land, in this place, filled with uncircumcised pagans, are you going to let me die here? And God doesn't. God allows him to live. As an example of the principle that God's work done God's way will always be provided for by God. Okay? We don't have to work for those things because God will supply. We just need to be doing the work of God, right? So here the Lord showed his faithfulness to Samson by supplying the needs of his servant. God clave a hollow place that was in the jaw, and then it came water thereout, and when he drank, his spirit came again, he revived, and then he named the place En Hakor, which is in Lehi to this day. Final verse here, verse 20. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. He was the judge of Israel for 20 years, but this here isn't the end of Samson, okay? We've still got one more chapter next week to go through to see how the account of Samson ends, which is one of my favorite parts. But if you look, again, I'm going to rewind here. How long was Samson a judge for? They were in bondage for 40 years. He judged for his whole time for 20. So this is saying that his whole span as a judge was 20 years. Okay? Make sense? And this is I like this key kind of thing, enemy, years of bondage, judge, deliverance, because it really helps you just see the timelines of how it all laid out, how long they were oppressed for, and what God did to deliver them. Let me jump back here, and we'll jump into our three 3 final thoughts for you guys, okay? So, first one, leading with emotions is not a good idea. They will lead you astray. Notice that when Samson was angry, he reacted obviously in anger or with revenge and an revengeful heart, and it got him into more trouble. It just got him further and further in. And that back and forth with the Philistines keeps going. When we live our lives, we shouldn't be living this way of like, I'm going to be led emotionally. Because our emotions are going to lead us astray. Okay? Love. You fall in love with someone, smitten. Right? But you shouldn't let that be the reason why you're with the person. It shouldn't just be about looks. It should be more than that, right? I think this is the part when you look at Samson's life and you go, he fell in love with the wrong lady, got led astray by his heart, right? He was hungry, so he shoved his hand inside of a lion and ate because he was hungry, got led by his stomach, right? He was only led by God here at the end when he was able to turn around and say, to the glory of God, you gave me this victory. You gave me the victory here. All the other times he was led by emotion, by anger, by revenge, by hunger, all those different things. Do not be led in these ways. They'll lead you astray. It's a dangerous path to lead if you're going to be led by your emotions, okay? Revenge. Number 2, revenge is not an answer, right? Revenge is not the answer because it ends up hurting everyone. Think about what Jesus said, right? Matthew 5:38-48, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that you resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Jesus is saying, if they slap you this side, offer that side. If they do this to you, do it, say, why not do it again? Because actually, if they're evil, they're going to do it. But what he's saying is, do not strike back. Do not take their eye for your eye. Do not live this way. Revenge is not the answer. As Christians, we're meant to love. We're meant to be kind, to be gracious. It doesn't mean we're pushovers, but it does mean we need to forgive. Why? Because the Father's forgiven us. That's the big thing. That's one of the toughest parts for me for being a Christian. Forgiving because the Father forgave us first. Loving because the Father is love, right? Being gracious because Jesus is so gracious to us. Doing the things that Jesus did, even when you're like, I just want to punch them back. It doesn't work that way. Revenge is not the answer, okay? Think about how Jesus lived. Try to be like Jesus, okay? That's a simple one there. And then the third and final thought here, in times of need, call on the Lord. Samson was so thirsty, he cried out, I need help. But it took him this long. It took him 3 whole chapters so far to finally cry out and say, God, I need you. God, I need you. I want to challenge you. Go back to chapter 13, go back to chapter 14, and go back to chapter 15 and see where he called out to God beforehand. There's not many other times. This would seem that this is the main time that he calls out to God and says, I need you to come through for me here. I'm dying of thirst. I need sustenance. I need help. And God comes through. In times of trouble, in times of need, call on the Lord. But you know what's even better? In times of laughter, in times of good times, call on the Lord. In times of happiness, call on the Lord. Like, keep him involved in your life. Call on the Lord. Right? Seems kind of funny, but it's one of the most simple things to do. Just talk to Jesus about everything. But it's so hard sometimes. Don't be like Samson. Don't wait until you're dying of thirst and after a big battle, and then call on the Lord. Talk to him the whole way through. Keep him involved in your life, right? Cool. That's Judges 15.